except I phase it.
Good morning. We had a joyful beginning of this service planned all week. And then news began to reach us all yesterday afternoon of the murder of 10 of our fellow citizens, 10 of our black siblings in Buffalo, New York yesterday. We don't know their names in full yet, but we know that their lives have been taken irremediably. Join me in a moment of silence for these people who share this world with us and to whom we are connected. When something like this happens, our first response is grief. The loss of lives that are of equal worth as our own. And then our response moves to outrage. Murder is wrong. And white supremacy, the philosophy that some of us are better than others of us, is wrong. It is a lie. And that lie that has poisoned the roots of our country for 500 years is a poison that we have a responsibility to draw out the best that we can. Whoever we are, whatever our understanding, whatever our privilege, if we are here, we have a job to do. To step in the way and to name that poison and to do everything we can in our lives to remedy it. As it happens, today, after the service, we will hold another of our ongoing series of congregational dialogues on becoming anti-racist and anti-oppressive and multicultural. And so I want to invite you, whether you've been to every single one of our dialogues or to none of them, to stay after the service. We'll go into a time of fellowship, and in that same space, we will engage in conversation with each other. And the conversation today is about the intersection of anti-racist and anti-oppressive multicultural thinking with our responsibilities as a congregation in this neighborhood, how we can be a good neighbor in a majority black neighborhood. So there is a way, immediately following the murders of yesterday, for us to act on the poison. I invite you to come. We had planned a service to begin in joy. And we are not going to let murderers steal our joy. We are going to take the words and songs of joy that we have planned for this most beautiful May morning, and we are going to speak them, and we are going to sing them, and we are going to let them be a voice for life, for human being, for community, a voice of resilience and resistance and rebuttal to a poison that would kill. Thank you for doing this work together today.
Good morning. This reading comes from the Meditations of Roman Emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius. When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love.
That was lovely. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Susan Tarragano, and I serve on the Board of Trustees of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spartanburg. It is my delight to welcome you all this morning, whether you are here in person or joining us virtually. This is a welcoming congregation where everyone is welcome just as we are. Let me share with you a few important announcements. You can find these and more on the sheet titled Connect at the back of your bulletin this morning. Scott's already mentioned our consciousness dialogue, so I'd like to extend my invitation to you as well after the service. It should be a very interesting discussion. Mark your calendars for these important dates in the democratic life of our own congregation. Leadership Development will host a brief meeting of Meet the Candidates gathering after the Sunday service on May 22nd. Come to meet the candidates we will be considering for election to church leadership at this year's annual meeting. Our candidates have been nominated through an open congregational process of suggesting nominees this spring, then reviewed and presented for election by Leadership Development. On Thursday, May 26th at 6 via Zoom, our board will hold a budget and bylaw amendment question and answer. And I know everyone has tons of questions about those things. Come and learn more about what we'll be voting on at the annual meeting this June. Watch the happenings email for the Zoom link as the date approaches. On Sunday, June 5th, following our morning service, we will hold our annual congregational meeting in the sanctuary. Hear year-end reports from our leaders and cast your votes for the next year. More information is to come about absentee voting for those who are unable to attend the meeting. Following the meeting, make plans to join everyone for a potluck lunch in our freshly cleaned and organized Wild Hall that you can now access via our newly installed elevator. Woohoo! Sign-up sheets for helping and with setup and what to bring will be posted. See our hospitality team leader, Pam Stoll, right there, with questions. Thank you for making this place a warmth and kindness with every time we gather across all of our differences. Welcome.
I will happily change from the meditations of Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius. If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change. For I seek the truth, by which no one was ever truly harmed. It is the person who continues in his self-deception and ignorance who is harmed. Whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question. What fault of mine is most nearly resembled in the one I am about to criticize?
Please stand as you're willing and able and join us in hymn number 123, Spirit of Life.
When water has a flat surface, it is in its lowest energy state. When you put something like a stone into it, you have given the water some energy. This causes the water to move around, likely to ripple out, as it tries to spread out the energy so it can go back to having a still, flat surface. Each week, when we gather around the rippling bowl and place a stone or shell in the water, we are adding energy to the water by sharing our joys and concerns. The ripples that happen in the water are symbolic of how we share this energy and how our load is lighter. We can feel that others are walking alongside us through all things. There are many of us who are holding a lot. And we know that joy shared are multiplied and concerns shared are lessened. This ritual is one of the many ways that this congregation cares for one another. For those of you joining us online, I will place 2 stones in the rippling bowl, one for joys and one for concerns to represent those you are holding. Thank you for being such an amazing congregation that cares deeply for each other and the wider community. Please come share your joys and concerns with one another. Last week, Robin Carter shared that the first time she visited this church and read the covenant, that she didn't make it through without tears streaming down her face. She felt as though that the words were her own pouring out of her heart, and they were on a paper in front of her. She knew she had found the place and the people she was looking for. Well, I had a very similar experience during my first visit. First, I looked at the cover of the order of service and read the mission statement and thought, I do think maybe this is a place I should do my internship. Then when it came time in the service to share the covenant, I remember feeling it viscerally. I had chills, I had tears. That day, I knew I wanted to be a part of this place. And I hoped that you all would want this seminary student to spend 1 year with you. And here we are together 4 years later. And I still get chills when I read the covenant. It reflects who we strive to be so well. We don't always get it right, but the intent is there. And when we don't get it right, we try again, holding fast to the words of this covenant that we have with each other. The words of the covenant are printed in today's order of service. For those of you joining us virtually, they are available on the homepage on the website and the YouTube page. Please join me in speaking these living words together. We are a people of faith and hope. Together we covenant to strive to become our better selves, to honor both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to respond to systems of violence and oppression with the power of a love beyond belief. So we're at the place in our service that is the very favorite of some of us, and for others, not so much. It is the sacred time of greeting one another. If you are joining us virtually this morning, please take time to reach out to someone by text or email, make a phone call after the service, or just bring someone to mind. If you're in the sanctuary, please be conscientious of the comfort level of the one you are greeting. They may or may not want a big hug. They may prefer a fist bump, an elbow tap, or a simple hello. If you are most comfortable staying in your seat, please do so. There are many of us for whom that is the case. I know you people, and I know you could greet and visit all day long, but let's not. There's much more goodness coming in the service that you don't want to miss. I mean, we don't really know what Scott might have up his sleeve today. One week, he climbed up on the piano bench behind Sydney. Last week, he brought a bat and balls into the sanctuary and hit them out into the congregation. So go and greet one another, but head back to your seats when you hear Sydney play a few bars. This beloved community cares deeply for each other and for our wider community and the world. It's amazing to see all the different projects and activities that ripple out from this place as a way of co-creating the world that we know is possible. We have so many opportunities to share our gifts, gifts of time, gifts of talents, gifts of financial resources. All of them matter. All of them help us do this work. And you are all so generous with the entirety of your gifts. As the ushers come forward this morning, I ask that you continue your generosity.
You guys are welcome to sing along if you would like to, since we all know this one exactly. You can sing along with anything, technically, but, you know, definitely this one. Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, where are you? In the sky song, in the forest sounds your cry. What to give you, what to call you, what am I? Many drops are in the ocean deep and wide. Sunlight bounces off the ripples to the sky. What to give you, what to call you, who am I? I am empty, time flies from me, what is time? Dreams eternal, fears infernal, haunt my heart. What to give you, what to call you, oh my God. Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, take our hearts. Take our breath and let our voices sing our parts. Take our hands and let us work to shape our art.
Another reading from the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one.
All month we have been talking about masculinity. And we've talked about the dangers of the caricature of masculinity and the great constructive power for all of us, whatever our gender identity may be, of claiming that energy that we identify as masculine. Yesterday we saw the enormous destructive power of that caricature of masculinity. Camouflage and a rifle, stealing the lives of 10 people. So today we want to think about what we do with our power. What is the choice that we make in our lives? Share silence with me. What is power, and how do we use it? There are lots of programs for developing leaders, programs for developing women as leaders, programs for developing girls into young women as leaders, programs for calling forth emerging leaders from communities of color. In our own city, there's a whole school that is dedicated to leadership development for elementary age children, especially because the majority of the children in that school, by well above 90%, are children who are black and in poverty. And so that school has been designed to help them see themselves as leaders and to call forth their leadership in their life and in their families and their community for the sake of all of our future. These are beautiful things, beautiful projects. And part of what we can see when we see these kinds of programs, which are wonderful programs, is an unspoken context, which is that we live in a society that traditionally names men as leaders, and particularly white men as leaders. Now, I'm a white man who is a leader. I'm not against white men being leaders. But we can see, just by the way we try to address our social development by developing these kinds of programs, that things are out of balance and rebalancing is needed. Our own efforts as a congregation to develop leaders takes these things into consideration, not only these things, but these things as well. What will create balance and representation for the sake of our mutual thriving? What will really create life here? I've had the opportunity to to work very closely with a number of leaders who are men, particularly in congregational settings, where I have found myself working my whole adult life. And I have learned a great deal from each of these men. Some of it really good stuff. How do you know to laugh before I even speak the words? Ministers can be jerks, right? I recall one minister who shared with me he had been listening to books on tape back when there were such things as books on tape, before the ubiquity of streaming. He had been listening to how to run corporations, books by CEOs. And this minister looked me straight in the face. This is a Christian minister in a Christian tradition where forgiveness is the predominant theological value. And this person said to me, "You know what I've learned? I've learned to never say I'm sorry." What? That is a direct contradiction of the basic value of that religious worldview. And in the words of Marcus Aurelius, when we're about to criticize someone, we should ask ourselves, well, what about us? The thing that sticks in me when I remember that story, I remember so vividly the moment that happened, is why didn't I have the courage to speak back to that person? Was it about me and about my position in relationship to them that I felt disbelief inside of myself, but left them unchallenged? I've heard another story about another male minister. It comes to me on good authority, but I did not hear it myself, so I'll offer that caveat. But they were talking about the crisis of lack of rising ministerial leadership, not enough young people coming into ministry in their denominational setting. This is something we see across the Western world right now. And the person commented, you know, we've got to develop some programs to develop new young ministers, or women are going to take over the church. Now, the first thing that I would say to that is, have you looked around? Get wise to who your greatest support is and where the strongest source of leadership already is. But just think about the bias, the sexism inherent in that. People who have answered a calling with many demands to be leaders in ethics and spirituality, who, for whatever reasons, and we could probably name good reasons in their lives, but for whatever reasons, in those moments, chose power for themselves, chose privilege, the use of power for self-preservation. I'm never going to say I'm sorry. What kind of a leader would do that? Never have the humility and the courage to apologize, or to hold ascendant positions of power only for people like myself. What foolhardiness is that? What lack of diversity and generative thinking? What ignorance about the way spirit, whatever spirit is, calls everybody we're not expecting to lead. There is one person long ago and far away that I had an opportunity to work with, a person I care about a great deal, who made it a practice to choose something different. Learned so much from this person. He was intensely aware of his privilege as a white man and a person in significant job of religious authority. He knew all that came to him because of that. And he made it a practice, year in and year out, during the time that I knew him, to choose his power not for himself, but to make it something shared. To take all that privilege that would come to him and try to turn it back to all the people around him. He was well known in each of his ministry settings over decades for intentionally developing female leadership on his teams, on the teams where he served. And not just employing people to come and work with him, certainly not to work for him, but developing ways of meeting weekly and collaborating and listening to each other and foregrounding women's voices in the pulpit and other seats of power within those organizations. In a dedicated way, choosing to diversify voice instead of hold on to it. And it was enormously effective. I saw the transformative power of just this shared leadership as whole programs would boost, whole sections of congregational life would boost, because it wasn't one person trying to do everything and take all the credit, but it was multiple leaders working in concert with each other, synergizing. Very smart, very effective. Addressing social ills and the pervasiveness of social inequality and inequity. He worked with a group to articulate a statement, the key phrase of which was, I'm going to use their language, this is not me imposing an idea on you, please hear me, but I want you to hear their language, saying, racism and poverty are an offense to God. And saying that to the entire congregation. Saying it to people whose employment may do less than help people rise out of poverty. Saying that to people whose land holdings and land management might not offer people the very best housing opportunities. Saying directly to the people who's called to serve, racism and poverty are an offense to our highest value. A person using his power and his privilege to place himself in jeopardy, questioned and antagonized, in order to build up the whole network of which he was a part, the whole world around him. I watched this pattern unfold and saw it in previous aspects of this person's career as I look back over where they'd been and what they had done. It was beautiful work. This person was far from perfect. I told them to their face a number of times things that were imperfect about them. It's telling that I felt okay to say it to that person when I had felt so shy about saying it to another person. They had opened a space for me to speak the truth to them. It's a big deal. And I remember so clearly what happened when the denomination of which that person was a part took one step further in saying, we support same-gender marriage in our denomination. There had been many steps along the way. Those slow, cautious, moderate steps that religious bodies are so partially willing to take, never going the whole distance but inching forward. But when that denomination took that step to say, our clergy are now given permission to perform wedding ceremonies for same-gender couples. Many of you have seen it in other places. There was a big argument here about 30 years ago. In the fight that ensued, I watched this leader who I'd come to so admire and care about take a beating day after day after day for months into years. Criticism to his face, criticism behind his face, punches to his face, sucker punches to the back of the head, people just disappearing, never saying what was going on or why, people withholding gifts. All the things that you know happen in these circumstances. Now, there were a lot of people who stood beside him and supported him. Staff members and congregants. And that really mattered, that community of mutual support. But I watched this guy just take a beating every single day. And I watched him as he constantly, intentionally, would step in front of the punches being thrown. When I first saw this, I thought, what? Wait a minute, you just stepped into that punch. And I watched him do it over and over again. When someone wanted to level an attack on marriage equality or on the theological views that supported this transformative moment for the denomination, rather than step to the side or just argue, he would step right into the middle of it and take the body blow. At some point I said, why are you doing that? This is excruciating to watch. I can't imagine what it's like to actually do it. And he said, just turn around with me and look who else is standing there. And he named beloved members of the congregation and of our families, people in the community and friends who had suffered these attacks their whole lives. You know better than I do what I'm talking about. And who had experienced this hatred constantly for decades. This man was taking his privilege, his power, and his authority, and in what little way he could, trying to use it as a shield. He knew that it wouldn't do all the things he wanted it to do. It couldn't ever block all the punches. But as a leader, he was convicted that his job was to step forward into the fight rather than to let the blows rain down where they had rained for decades and centuries. Sitting with me in the quiet late one night, for just a moment he broke down this stoic bearing that he had held so long. He said, I just don't know how much longer I can take this. And he went on for years. What is leadership? Leadership is not taking what we want and making everybody else give it to us. There are people who will tell us that's what leadership is, because guess what? They want to take something from us. Leadership is service. Leadership is looking at the world that we share and asking, what is going to be best for us all? What moved me so much about this man that I love is not only his integrity and his skill and his fortitude, not only his willingness to step in and take the hit, to try to spare somebody else just a little bit of pain, but that his vision was he was doing this also for the person doing the punching. He believed not only for himself and his colleagues and the people that he loved, but even for the people attacking. Life was going to be better if they could change and change together. Using his power not to assert what he wanted, but to say what he thought was right, and to do it on behalf of everybody. He wasn't perfect. He still isn't. But I never saw him throw a punch back. There's a model of leadership deep in the heart of our culture. It's a model that has been stolen and turned to terrible ends. I'm going to name it for us because I think it's very important that we claim it back. When I name it, it may scare some of us. And some of you may want to take me to task after the service, which is just fine. I always welcome that. When I name this form of leadership, it is to reclaim it for us all, not to insist on a belief or an ideology or a theology. There was a person in the heart of Western culture who constantly chose to use his power for the people around him. And he summoned those people into a vision of community. In the UUA, when we speak about beloved community, we are drawing on his vision of a world in which everybody belonged together. He created such a compelling vision that the prevailing political power of the time, the Roman Empire, had enough. And as they had done with thousands of people before him, they decided to kill him. When Jesus, son of Mary, was arrested and beaten and presented before his execution, the Roman procurator who was overseeing his death said, Ecce Homo. It's Latin. It just means, behold the man. Behold the man. The Roman Empire had a policy of inclusion also. It wanted to include everybody in the world in its empire. the most inclusive community you can imagine, as long as you do what I want. The teaching of Jesus and of so many people before him, and so many people after him, including us, said we have a different vision. One where every single person belongs the same as everybody else, to the exclusion of no one, with sharing of power for everyone's benefit. And they beat the living daylights out of him because of it. When we stand up for each other, when we care about each other, when we lead not to get what we want, but to share the power that we have for the mutual thriving of us all, we create a world that is terrifying to the greedy and violent. A world that may try to crush us, but a world that is worth the fight. There's a picture on the front of your bulletin. It's a sculpture from Rome. It's remarkable for its detail. You can go online and look at pictures of it. The bronze inlay in the sculpture is such that gashes in the cheeks of the boxer can be seen, and blood shows where the boxer has been beaten to a pulp. It's an image of a person who has been in the fight and is absolutely exhausted. And in Hellenic and Roman boxing culture, guess what that boxer is about to have to get up and do again? One more round. One more round. When archaeologists uncovered this sculpture, they looked curiously at its hands and its feet. Not only for the remarkable detail of the gloves, the physique of the man, the detail of the battles that he's been in, but the hands and the feet of this sculpture have been rubbed and rubbed to a polish, even after millennia buried in the dirt of Rome, burnished to shine. The thought of archaeologists is this image of the athlete, of the boxer preparing to step back into the ring for another fight, was seen by the people of Rome as a source of power, of healing, something they could reach out and touch to draw strength for the fights of their own lives. Who are we going to be? The boxer that comes in to lay everybody else down? Or the fighters just about to get back up again? To share the power that we hold. To heal the whole world.
I'm just a poor boy and my story's seldom told. I've squandered my resistance to a pocket full of rumbles such as promises. All lies and jest, still the man hears what he wants to hear and just regards the rest. Well, I left my home and my family. I was no more than a boy in the company of strangers, in a quiet upper railway station, running scared, laying low, seeking out the poorer quarters where the ragged people go, looking for the places only they would know. I lie, 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 lie. Asking only workman's wages, I get looking for a job, but I get no offer. Just to come on from the horse of 7th Avenue. I do declare there were times when I was so lonesome, I took some comfort there. Lie, lie, lie. Lie, 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 lie. Well, I'm laying out my winter clothes and wishing I was home, going home, where the New York City winters aren't leading me, leading me. Going home. In the clearing stands a boxer and the fighter by his trade, and he carries a reminder of every glove that's laid him down or cut him till he cried out in his anger and his shame. I am leaving, but the fighter still remains. Lie, 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 Thank you.
Live a good life from the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil, but I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own, not of the same blood and birth, but the same mind, and possessing a share of the divine. And so none of them can hurt me. No one can implicate me in ugliness, nor can I feel angry at my relative or hate him. We were born to work together like feet, hands and eyes, like the two rows of teeth, upper and lower. When another blames you or hates you, or people voice similar criticisms, go to their soul, penetrate inside, and see what sort of people they are. You will realize that there is no need to be racked with anxiety, that they should hold any particular opinion about you. Live a good life. If there are gods and they are just, then they will not care how devout you have been, but will welcome you based on your virtues you have been lived by. If there are gods but unjust, then you should not want to worship them. If there are no gods, then you will be gone, but will have lived a noble life that will live on in the memories of your loved ones.
How will we use our power? Fighters through the ages. Name every one. No name more important than the other. Have fought for the beloved community where every person belongs and can live, just live, and thrive. Because we use our power for each other. Come and build it.